Never mind that. Never mind that now. Never mind that. Never mind.
Why, that's me!
Back to the Future is one of my favorite movies of all time. Top tier desert island, watch it every year kind of favorite. The DeLorean, the lightning strike, the perfect casting, that incredible Alan Silvestri score. Everything works, but this masterpiece almost never existed. January 10th, 1985. An actor is being fired after 6 weeks of filming and millions of dollars already spent. The iconic time machine can't even reach 88 miles per hour. A studio executive is actively pushing to rename the whole thing Spaceman from Pluto. And Disney, yes, Disney, rejected the entire script, calling it a movie about incest. The story of how this film got made is almost as incredible as the film itself. So today, I'm taking you behind the scenes of Back to the Future with the chaos, desperation, and literal hairdryers that somehow created one of the greatest movies ever made. Fact 1. It started with a yearbook. In 1980, screenwriter Bob Gale was visiting his parents when he stumbled across his father's 1940 high school yearbook. Flipping through it, he discovered something he'd never known. His dad had been class president. Gale was stunned. He thought about his own high school's class president, someone he'd had zero respect for. And suddenly a question hit him that would change cinema history. Would I have been friends with my dad if we'd gone to high school together? He called his writing partner Robert Zemeckis with the idea. They'd been trying to crack a time travel story, and this was it. The emotional core they'd been missing. A kid traveling back in time to meet his parents as teenagers. Not to save the world, not to fight aliens, just to answer that simple universal question. Who were my parents before they became my parents? They started writing immediately. Fact 2. 40 rejections from every major studio. Zemeckis and Gale completed their first draft in 1981 and immediately started shopping it to every major Hollywood studio. They were rejected more than 40 times. 40 different executives read their time travel comedy and said no thanks. The reason? The early 1980s were dominated by raunchy teen comedies. Porky's, Fast Times at Ridgemont High, Revenge of the Nerds. Studios wanted hormones, nudity, and R-rated chaos. Back to the Future was dismissed as too wholesome, too clean, not edgy enough to compete with what was making money. Plus, time travel movies were considered box office poison. The conventional wisdom in Hollywood was that audiences didn't care about time travel stories. They were too complex, too science fiction, too niche. So here was Zemeckis and Gale's impossible position. Their script was simultaneously too innocent and too complicated, rejected from all sides. Fact 3. Disney called it incest. After hearing, "Why don't you take it to Disney?" so many times, Zemeckis and Gale finally did. This was before Michael Eisner reinvented the company, the last days of the old Disney family regime. They walked into the meeting, the executive read the script, and then he exploded. "Are you guys nuts? Are you insane? We can't make a movie like this. You've got the kid and the mother in his car. It's incest. This is Disney. It's too dirty for us." Yes, Disney, the company that would one day own Marvel and Star Wars, rejected Back to the Future for being too scandalous. The irony was almost poetic. Too dirty for Disney, too clean for everyone else. The script was caught in a cultural no man's land, and it looked like it might never get made. Fact 4. Romancing the Stone changed everything. Zemeckis had bombed with his earlier films. 1941 with Steven Spielberg had been a notorious flop. Used Cars with Kurt Russell hadn't exactly lit up the box office either. He was talented, but he wasn't bankable, not yet. Then in 1984, everything changed. Romancing the Stone, a screwball adventure with Michael Douglas and Kathleen Turner, became a major hit. Suddenly, Zemeckis was a hot director. Studios started returning his calls. Steven Spielberg, who had been a friend and mentor, saw his opportunity. His production company, Amblin Entertainment, came on board as executive producer. With Spielberg's name attached, Universal Pictures finally greenlit the project. Budget $19 million. For 1985, that was serious money. But there was still one major problem standing between the script and actual filming, and it involved an astronaut from Pluto. Fact 5. How Spielberg saved the title with one brilliant sentence. Sid Sheinberg, the president of Universal Pictures, didn't like the title Back to the Future. He genuinely believed that no movie with the word future in its title had ever been successful. So he made some suggestions. Some were reasonable. Change Professor Brown to the friendlier Doc Brown. Change Doc's pet from a chimpanzee to a dog. Sure, fine. But then came the catastrophic one. Sheinberg wanted to rename the entire movie Spaceman from Pluto. He'd latched onto the comic book clutched by the terrified farm kid when Marty crashes into the barn in 1955. The comic shows a spaceship and reads Space Zombies from Pluto. Sheinberg thought this was the real hook of the movie. He sent a formal memo demanding the title change and suggesting they rewrite parts of the script to emphasize the spaceman angle. Zemeckis and Gale panicked. They'd just fought for years to get this movie made, and now the studio head wanted to call it Spaceman from Pluto. They showed Spielberg the memo. Spielberg smiled and said, "Don't worry, I know just how to handle him." He wrote back one sentence. "Hi Sid, thanks for your most humorous memo. We all got a big laugh out of it. Keep 'em coming." That was it. Spielberg pretended Sheinberg's serious suggestion was obviously a joke, too embarrassed to admit he'd been serious. Sheinberg never mentioned Spaceman from Pluto again. The title was saved. Production could finally begin, but now they had an even bigger problem. Who was going to play Marty McFly? Fact 6. Michael J. Fox was locked away in a sitcom. From day one, Zemeckis wanted Michael J. Fox. Fox had the perfect energy, quick, funny, physical, emotionally grounded. He was the only actor Zemeckis could imagine as Marty McFly. There was just one insurmountable problem. Fox was starring in Family Ties, one of the biggest sitcoms on television. Gary David Goldberg, the show's producer, flat out refused to let Fox read the Back to the Future script. He feared that losing his star would damage the show's success, so Fox never even saw the screenplay. He had no idea he was wanted for a movie that would change his life, and Zemeckis was forced to audition dozens of other young actors, trying to find someone, anyone, who could capture what he knew Fox would bring naturally. Fact 7. Eric Stoltz was cast and saw the movie as a tragedy. After screening countless actors, the choice eventually came down to Eric Stoltz. He'd just starred in Mask, playing a teenager with a severe facial deformity, and his performance had been critically acclaimed. Sid Sheinberg was particularly impressed. Sheinberg told the filmmakers, "I'm so convinced that Eric is going to be great in this part. If it doesn't work out, you can recast it and start all over again." It was the kind of thing executives say to make everyone feel better. Nobody actually expected they'd have to do it. Filming officially began on November 26, 1984. Stoltz was Marty McFly. Everything seemed fine, and then they started watching the dailies. Eric Stoltz was a serious, committed method actor. On set, he insisted that everyone call him Marty. If you called him by his real name, he wouldn't respond. Christopher Lloyd later admitted he didn't even know the actor's actual name for several weeks. But the real problem wasn't the name thing. It was Stoltz's interpretation of the character. He believed Back to the Future was a tragedy. In his view, Marty creates a perfect life for his family in the new timeline, but he's the only one who remembers the old timeline. He never gets to truly live in the happiness he created. It's actually an interesting reading of the film. Intellectually, you can see where he's coming from, but emotionally, dramatically, it killed the comedy. Every scene Stoltz played was weighted with melancholy. The lightness, the fun, the heart, it was all gone. Fact 8. Stoltz got too physical, and Zemeckis made the hardest call. Stoltz didn't just commit mentally, He committed physically. In the cafeteria fight scene where Marty punches Biff, Stoltz shoved Thomas F. Wilson so hard during takes that it made the entire production uncomfortable. Wilson later said working with Stoltz felt wrong. The entire cast and crew were walking on eggshells, never quite sure how to interact with someone who refused to break character. Meanwhile, Zemeckis was watching the dailies every day, and a sick feeling was growing in his stomach. This wasn't working. This wasn't the movie he'd written, but thousands of feet of film had already been shot. Millions of dollars spent. What could he do? Fact 9. The most expensive firing in 1980s Hollywood. 5 to 6 weeks into production, Zemeckis made one of the hardest decisions of his career. On January 10, 1985, Eric Stoltz was fired from Back to the Future. Zemeckis later described it as the worst experience of my career and said he felt he'd broken Stoltz's heart. Whether Stoltz was devastated or secretly relieved depends on who's telling the story, but either way, he was out. The decision added between $3 and $4 million to the film's budget, pushing it from $19 million to nearly $23 million. Every single scene Stoltz had filmed would need to be reshot. The clock was ticking, the budget was ballooning, and they still didn't have a Marty McFly. There's one ghost of this alternate timeline that remains. In the cafeteria fight scene when Marty punches Biff, the shot is filmed from directly above to hide the actor's face. That punch, that's Eric Stoltz. Thomas F. Wilson is genuinely getting hit by the original Marty McFly. It's the only footage of Stoltz that made it into the final cut. Zemeckis went back to his first choice. Please, Michael, we'll do anything. We'll work around family ties. Just say yes. Fact 10. Michael J. Fox said yes, without reading the script, and they shot around his absence. Desperate, Zemeckis and the producers went back to Fox and Gary David Goldberg with a new proposal. Fox could do both. They'd work around the family ties schedule. Goldberg finally agreed and a deal was struck. Fox was so exhausted from the negotiations and his existing workload that he simply said yes without reading the script. He trusted Zemeckis. He trusted Spielberg. That was enough. He signed on to play Marty McFly without having any idea what the movie was actually about. Production couldn't wait for Fox to finish his family ties commitments. They had to start shooting immediately. So in the opening scene where Marty walks into Doc's lab, we only see his feet and lower legs. That's not Michael J. Fox. That's his stand-in. They literally shot around the star of the movie because he wasn't available yet. Fact 11. The most brutal schedule in Hollywood history. When Fox finally arrived, here's what he'd agreed to. On weekdays, he would film Family Ties at Paramount Studios from 10 in the morning until 6 at night. Then a station wagon with a mattress in the back would drive him to the Universal lot while he tried to sleep. He'd arrive at the Back to the Future set around 6:30 p.m. and shoot until 2:30 in the morning. But Fridays were the worst. Fox would rehearse Family Ties from noon to 5 p.m., then film 2 live audience tapings that ran until 10 p.m. Then he'd get driven to the Back to the Future set and shoot until 6 or 7 in the morning on Saturday. Weekends were reserved for all the daytime exterior shots for Back to the Future. This schedule continued for over 2 months. Fox lived on coffee, adrenaline, and sheer willpower. He never complained, not once. And here's the thing, you can see it in his performance. When Marty looks tired, he was tired. When he seems frantic, that's real exhaustion feeding the character. Christopher Lloyd, who'd initially had doubts about the last-minute casting change, watched Fox work and all his concerns evaporated. This was Marty McFly. Finally. Facts 12. Jennifer was recast 3 times. The casting chaos wasn't limited to Marty. Melora Hardin, yes, Jan from The Office, was originally cast as Jennifer Parker opposite Eric Stoltz. But when Fox came in, suddenly there was a height problem. Fox is 5'4", Hardin is taller. The producers worried the difference would be too noticeable on screen, so Hardin was let go, and Claudia Wells was hired just days before filming her scenes. Wells had originally turned down the role due to her mother's illness, but the timing now worked. She was great in the first film, but Wells couldn't return for part 2 due to personal reasons, so Elizabeth Shue took over for the sequels. One role, 3 different actresses. Hollywood is chaos. If the story of how this movie got made is already blowing your mind, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me which behind-the-scenes disaster you find the most insane. And subscribe for more deep dives like this because we're only getting started. Fact 13. From refrigerator to DeLorean. How the time machine evolved. Let's talk about the DeLorean, because before the time machine was a car, it was a lot weirder. In the earliest drafts of Back to the Future, the time machine was a lead-lined refrigerator. The original climax involved Marty driving to a nuclear bomb test site in the Nevada desert, climbing inside the fridge, and using the atomic explosion to power his jump through time. Sounds insane, right? Also wildly impractical for a movie. Imagine chase scenes with Marty dragging a refrigerator through Hill Valley. Steven Spielberg vetoed the idea, and not just because it slowed the story down. He was genuinely concerned that kids might see the movie and then climb into abandoned refrigerators, which in the 1980s were legitimate death traps with latching doors that couldn't be opened from inside. So the fridge was out. They needed something mobile, something that could race through the streets at 88 miles per hour, something that, to a family in 1955, would look like it came from another planet. Universal Pictures hired a product placement company for the film, and at one point Ford came forward with a deal. They offered $75,000 serious money in 1985 on the condition that the DeLorean be swapped out for a Ford Mustang. Bob Gale's response was immediate and profane. Doc Brown doesn't drive a fucking Mustang, and he was right. The whole point was the gull-wing doors. When those doors lifted up, they looked like something alien. To a family in 1955 Hill Valley, the DeLorean would register as a UFO. A Mustang? Just another car. The visual storytelling would have been completely lost, so they stuck with the DeLorean DMC-12, which, as it turned out, came with its own set of problems. Ironically, Spielberg would later use the refrigerator idea himself in Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, but that's a different story. Fact 14. The DeLorean was a beautiful failure, and its creator was facing drug charges. The DeLorean DMC-12 has one of the strangest backstories in automotive history. John DeLorean had been the youngest executive in General Motors history and the mastermind behind the Pontiac GTO and Firebird. In the early 1970s, he left GM to pursue his dream, building his own radical sports car with a stainless steel body and gull-wing doors. After years of delays and production problems, the DMC-12 finally launched in 1981 with a staggering price tag of $25,000, equivalent to about $88,860 in today's money. The car looked incredible, but was plagued by quality control issues and terrible performance. The weak 130 horsepower V6 engine meant 0 to 60 in over 9 seconds, merely adequate for the early 1980s and pathetic for something marketed as a sports car. Only 8,795 DeLoreans were manufactured over 2 years before the company went bankrupt. And here's where it gets wild. While Back to the Future was in development, John DeLorean was arrested in an FBI sting operation for cocaine trafficking. He was eventually acquitted, but the trial was happening during production. According to behind-the-scenes accounts, this actually gave the car an added sense of danger. The DeLorean was a failure, a beautiful, iconic failure, and that's exactly why it worked for the movie. But working with it was a nightmare. During filming, stunt drivers genuinely struggled to get the DeLorean up to 88 miles per hour during chase scenes. They needed long stretches of road and running starts just to hit the speed. And the sound, the DeLorean's actual engine made a wimpy, unimpressive whine, so the sound team swapped it out entirely, replacing it with the deep, aggressive growl of a Porsche 928 V8. Movie magic turned failure into power. On screen, the DeLorean sounds like a beast. In reality, it could barely outrun a determined jogger. Fact 15. 3 DeLoreans and the mystery of 88 miles per hour. The production team purchased 3 used 1981 DeLorean DMC-12s and converted them into time machines. They're referred to as the A car, the B car, and the C car. The A car was the hero car, fully detailed inside and out, used for all the beauty shots and close-ups. The B car was the stunt car, reinforced for the punishment of filming and used primarily for action sequences. It was ultimately destroyed during the filming of Part 3. The C car had its front end cut out entirely so that the production's large film cameras could fit inside the cramped interior for shooting dialogue scenes. 3 more DeLoreans were built for the sequels, and the total cost for all the modifications across the trilogy was approximately $150,000. Today, the original A car is on display at the Peterson Automotive Museum in Los Angeles, but even the hero car had its problems. Why 88 miles per hour? According to the filmmakers, it was chosen because it was easy to remember and looked cool on the speedometer. That's it. No deeper meaning, just vibes. But there was a problem. In 1979, President Jimmy Carter signed a law limiting car speedometers to 85 miles per hour in an effort to discourage speeding. So in 1985, most cars, including the 1981 DeLorean, couldn't display speeds above 85. The production team had to build a custom speedometer that went up to 95 miles per hour just so they could capture that dramatic moment of the needle climbing past 85 and hitting 88. Fact 16. Hair dryers, cold nights, and stainless steel nightmares. And then there were the gull-wing doors. During the town square scene where Doc and Marty go over their plan to harness the lightning strike, the production faced an unexpected problem. It was a cold night, and the gas inside the hydraulic struts that held the doors open began to contract. The doors started slowly drooping closed during takes, ruining shot after shot. The solution? Between every take, the special effects crew would rush in and warm up the car with hair dryers. The heat expanded the gas in the struts, and the doors would stay open long enough to finish filming. One of the most iconic science fiction vehicles in cinema history was kept functional by Con Air. The DeLorean's stainless steel body panels might have looked futuristic, but they created another serious practical problem. You can't hammer out dents in stainless steel the way you can with regular car metal. This became especially problematic during the filming of Part 3, which involved a lot of rough desert driving and stunts. Damaged panels had to be completely swapped out rather than repaired, and the production had to keep spare parts on hand at all times. But hey, at least the car looked cool, and ultimately, that's what mattered, because today Ford is just Ford. But the DeLorean is legend. John DeLorean himself later wrote to Zemeckis and Gale, thanking them for what he called an absolutely brilliant film that immortalized his car. Fact 17. Alan Silvestri's score almost didn't happen and wasn't released for 24 years. Let's talk about the score. Because Back to the Future doesn't just sound good, it sounds iconic. And that almost didn't happen. Alan Silvestri was only 35 years old when he was hired to score Back to the Future. He'd previously worked with Zemeckis on Romancing the Stone, and Zemeckis wanted him back, but Steven Spielberg wasn't sure. Based on Silvestri's earlier work, Spielberg doubted whether the composer could deliver the big rousing score the movie needed. Zemeckis gave Silvestri one simple direction: it's got to be big. That was it. No temp music, no reference tracks, just make it big. Silvestri composed and recorded the score between June 5th and 11th, 1985. Spielberg walked into a rehearsal, heard the orchestra playing Silvestri's music, and thought it was new temp music that Zemeckis had cut in. When Zemeckis told him, "No, that's Alan's score," Spielberg's jaw dropped. He was instantly sold. The brass fanfare Silvestri created is recognizable in just a few notes. It's heroic, adventurous, and perfectly captures the spirit of the film, and it established what would become Silvestri's signature style: staccato brass hits, layered percussion, urgent piano runs. Everything we now associate with his music was born here. Here's something that frustrated film music fans for decades, though. When the Back to the Future soundtrack was released in 1985 by MCA Records, it contained only 2 tracks of Alan Silvestri's orchestral score. The rest of the album was filled with vocal songs, Huey Lewis, Chuck Berry covers, and other period music from the film. The complete score, all the beautiful, intricate orchestral work that Silvestri had composed, was essentially unavailable for 24 years. Finally, in November 2009, Intrada Records released a special 2-disc set containing the complete score. It was limited to 10,000 copies and sold nearly 6,000 units within the first 2 months. Fans who'd waited a quarter century to hear the full music could finally own it. It was worth the wait. Fact 18. Huey Lewis didn't want to be a film composer. Then cameos rejecting his own song. When the producers first approached Huey Lewis and the news about writing music for Back to the Future, Lewis politely declined. His reasoning was simple. "I'm not a film composer. I don't know how to write music specifically for a movie." The producers clarified. They didn't want him to write a song called Back to the Future. They didn't want a traditional film score. They just wanted a song with Huey Lewis's unmistakable sound, because Marty McFly was written in the script as a Huey Lewis fan. The character literally listens to Huey Lewis at the beginning of the movie. Lewis thought about it and came up with a compromise. He told them, "I'll send you the next song we write, whatever it happens to be." That song was The Power of Love. The lyrics to The Power of Love have absolutely nothing to do with time travel, flux capacitors, or DeLoreans. It's just a straightforward rock anthem about emotional strength and the power of love in relationships. But somehow it fit perfectly. The energy, the optimism, the 80s heart. It captured everything the movie was trying to be. And then there's the perfect meta moment. In the opening scene where Marty's band auditions for the school dance, they plug in and blast The Power of Love at ear-splitting volume. The stern, buttoned-up judge who cuts them off with "I'm afraid you're just too darn loud." That's Huey Lewis. He's literally rejecting his own song. Most viewers never even catch it. The Power of Love went on to hit #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 and earned an Academy Award nomination for Best Original Song. Lewis also wrote Back in Time specifically for the closing credits. 2 massive hits from one movie. Not bad for a guy who didn't want to be a film composer. Fact 19. A 99% test score meant 9 weeks of hell. In mid-May of 1985, Back to the Future held its first test screening. The visual effects weren't finished yet. Some scenes were still rough, but Universal needed to gauge audience reaction. The results were staggering. 99% of the audience rated the film either excellent or very good. That kind of score is almost unheard of. Even great movies rarely break 90%. Sid Sheinberg saw those numbers and made a bold, risky call. He moved the release date from August to July 3rd, just ahead of the July 4th holiday weekend, to capitalize on the summer box office momentum. It was a smart marketing decision, but it created an absolutely brutal problem for post-production. Back to the Future was originally scheduled for an August release, specifically to give the team more time for the complex special effects work. Films like this normally take months of post-production. Sheinberg's new release date gave them 9 weeks. 9 weeks. The team worked around the clock, racing to finish effects sequences, color timing, sound mixing, and final edits. Some shots were literally completed at the absolute last minute. Bob Gale later admitted that certain visual effects still aggravate him to this day because they simply ran out of time to polish them. If you watch closely, you can spot mistakes. Boom mic shadows, continuity errors, rough compositing, but none of it mattered because the movie worked. The story, the performances, the heart, it was all there, and audiences were about to go absolutely wild for it. Fact 20. 11 weeks at #1. Back to the Future opened on July 3, 1985, and earned $11.1 million over its opening weekend. Its competition that weekend, The Emerald Forest, made $4.3 million. Red Sonja made $2.2 million. It wasn't even close. The film stayed at number 1 for 11 of its first 12 weeks in theaters. It remained in the top 10 highest-grossing films for a total of 24 weeks. People kept going back. Families saw it twice, 3 times. It became a cultural event. When it finally finished its theatrical run, Back to the Future had earned approximately $210.6 million domestically and $381.1 million worldwide. Against a budget including reshoots of roughly $23 million, the film generated over $360 million in profit. It became the highest-grossing film of 1985, beating Rambo: First Blood Part 2 and Rocky IV. An estimated 59 million tickets were sold. From 40 rejections to the number 1 movie of the year, from Disney calling it incest to the most beloved family film of the decade, the comeback was complete. Fact 21: the lawsuit that changed Hollywood forever. Success meant sequels, and sequels meant bringing back the cast. But there was a problem with George McFly. Crispin Glover, who played George with that weird, twitchy, unforgettable energy in the first film, had issues with the movie's ending. He believed the message was too materialistic. The moral of the story becomes money equals happiness, Glover said in interviews. He thought the focus should have been on the family's improved relationships, not their mansion and fancy cars. But it wasn't just ideology. Glover was also upset that he'd been paid significantly less than Leah Thompson and Thomas F. Wilson, despite having a comparable role. For the sequel, he demanded $1 million to return. Universal refused. Glover walked away, and then Universal did something that would change Hollywood forever. Here's what happened. During the production of the first film, the makeup department had created face molds of Crispin Glover to help design the aging prosthetics for the 1985 scenes. Universal still had those molds, so they hired an unknown actor named Jeffrey Weissman, who had a similar build to Glover, and they used the old face molds to create new prosthetics that made Weissman look like Glover. They were literally stealing his face. To hide the deception, the filmmakers used camera tricks throughout Part 2. In one prominent scene, Old Man George is suspended upside down in an anti-gravity machine, making it harder to scrutinize his features. Other times, George is placed deep in the background, while other characters dominate the foreground, or he's turned slightly away from the camera. On set, things got uncomfortable. Crew members kept calling Weissman Crispin. At one point, Steven Spielberg walked by, saw Weissman in the makeup, and joked, "Hey Crispin, I see you got your $1 million." Michael J. Fox saw the makeup test and immediately warned, "Crispin ain't gonna like this." Leah Thompson, who'd become close with Glover during the first film, gave Weissman the cold shoulder throughout production. She later admitted it was hard for her to do scenes with an imposter. Most audiences never noticed the switch, but Crispin Glover noticed. In October 1990, Crispin Glover filed a lawsuit against Universal Pictures and Amblin Entertainment. His claim was straightforward. They had used his likeness without his permission. Universal's defense was chilling. They argued that they owned the character of George McFly, and since George McFly happened to look like Crispin Glover, they should be allowed to continue using that appearance. It was a deeply cynical argument, basically claiming that casting an actor meant owning their face forever. Glover's attorney, Doug Corey, made a prescient argument to the judge. "Things may happen in the future that will make this important. We need to draw a line." He was talking about CGI, digital recreation, and technology that barely existed yet. He saw where this was heading. The case settled out of court for $760,000. Universal made no admission of wrongdoing, but the impact was seismic. The Screen Actors Guild immediately added new clauses to its collective bargaining agreement, stating that filmmakers cannot use an actor's likeness without explicit permission. The settlement also ended the practice of fake shemp, Hollywood slang for using body doubles and prosthetics to make it appear that an actor is reprising a role when they're not. Glover later said, "To have people believe that you are doing something that you are not doing and attribute that to you is stealing. I'm proud of the lawsuit and standing up for that." Today, with AI, deepfakes, and digital recreations of deceased actors, Glover's lawsuit is more relevant than ever. He fought that battle in 1990, so every actor since wouldn't have to. And he won. Fact 22. Reagan loved it so much he rewound his favorite scene. Let's lighten things up with a presidential anecdote. There's a moment in the film where 1955 Doc Brown hears that Ronald Reagan is president in 1985. His reaction? It's one of the film's best jokes, poking fun at the idea that a Hollywood star could ever hold the highest office in the land. When the White House arranged the screening of Back to the Future, the staff was nervous. What if the president was offended? What if he thought they were mocking him? Reagan laughed harder than anyone in the room. He thought the joke was hilarious. In fact, he asked the projectionist to stop the film and rewind so he could watch the scene again. There was one awkward moment. When Doc sarcastically suggests, "I suppose Jane Wyman is the first lady," the room went silent. Jane Wyman was Reagan's first wife. They divorced in 1949. Nancy Reagan was not amused, but Reagan himself loved the movie so much that he quoted it in his 1986 State of the Union address. Standing before Congress, the president said, "As they said in the film Back to the Future, where we're going, we don't need roads." The chamber erupted in applause, the President of the United States quoting a time travel comedy in a formal address to the nation, peak 1980s. Fact 23. The National Film Registry and the vow of no remakes. In 2007, the Library of Congress selected Back to the Future for preservation in the National Film Registry. The registry honors films that are culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant to American cinema. Back to the Future is now officially recognized as one of the greatest films of all time. Not bad for the movie Disney rejected for being about incest, right? And here's something remarkable. As long as Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale are alive, there will be no remake or reboot. They control the rights and refuse to authorize any new versions. Zemeckis has compared the idea of remaking Back to the Future to remaking Citizen Kane, sacrilegious and pointless. Bob Gale has called any potential fourth film a tactless cash grab. There's also the reality of Michael J. Fox's Parkinson's disease. Fox can't play Marty McFly anymore, and Zemeckis and Gale refuse to recast the role. They believe it would be disrespectful to both Fox and the legacy of the films. The only exception they've allowed is Back to the Future the musical, which they control. It opened in London's West End and won the 2022 Olivier Award for Best New Musical. After Zemeckis and Gale pass away, their estates could theoretically negotiate new deals, though Zemeckis has expressed hope that his estate will continue blocking remakes even then. Back to the Future remains one of the few untouched franchises in modern Hollywood. No reboot, no remake, no gritty reimagining, just 3 perfect films exactly as they were made. Fact 24. The mall name changes because of a pine tree. Let's get into some of the film's hidden details and brilliant Easter eggs. When Marty first travels through time in 1985, he's in the parking lot of the Twin Pines Mall. When he arrives in 1955 and crashes into Old Man Peabody's farm, he accidentally runs over one of Peabody's 2 prized pine trees. Later, when Marty returns to 1985, the mall is now called Lone Pine Mall. This wasn't achieved through CGI or digital trickery. The filmmakers built 2 different physical signs and swapped them between scenes. It's one of the film's most elegant visual jokes, and it quietly demonstrates how even small actions in the past can ripple forward through time. The actual location is the Puente Hills Mall in City of Industry, California. Fans still visit to take photos in the exact spot where the Delorean vanished into the past. Fact 25. Sherman Peabody's comic book is packed with inside jokes. When Marty crashes into the barn and the Peabody family sees the Delorean, their son Sherman is clutching a comic book called Spaceman from Pluto. That's the terrible title Sid Sheinberg wanted for the movie. Zemeckis and Gale literally put the rejected title into the film as an inside joke. There's another layer too. Sherman Peabody, that's a reference to Mr. Peabody and Sherman, the time-traveling duo from the Rocky and Bullwinkle show. The whole scene is a love letter to time travel stories that came before. This movie is full of moments like this. Hidden references, layered jokes, details you only catch on the third or fourth viewing. It rewards attention. Fact 26. Make Like a Tree and Get Out of Here was improvised by Wilson. One of Biff's most memorable lines, "Why don't you make like a tree and get out of here?" wasn't in the script. Thomas F. Wilson improvised it on set. The correct saying, of course, is "make like a tree and leave." It's a pun that actually works, but Biff completely botches it, saying "get out of here" instead. Wilson has confirmed in interviews and on his famous FAQ card for fans that he coined both this phrase and the term butthead through improvisation during filming. It's perfect for the character. Biff is loud, aggressive, and intimidating, but he's also kind of an idiot. The mangled line captures everything about him in one sentence, and it worked so well that the filmmakers kept it. The payoff comes in Back to the Future Part 2. Old Biff hears his younger self say the line again and snaps, "It's leave, you idiot. Make like a tree and leave. You sound like a damn fool when you say it wrong." It's a callback to an improvised line that became one of the trilogy's running gags. Sometimes the best moments are the ones you don't plan. From A Father's Yearbook to the highest grossing film of 1985, from 40 studio rejections to a cultural phenomena, from the wrong actor to the perfect actor running on no sleep, from a failed sports car that couldn't hit 88 miles per hour to one of the most iconic vehicles in cinema history, from studio executives trying to rename it Spaceman from Pluto to a protected legacy that will never be rebooted. Sometimes the best outcomes come from disasters. Eric Stoltz being fired saved the movie. Michael J. Fox's exhaustion made Marty McFly real. The DeLorean's commercial failure made it legendary. Hair dryers kept gull-wing doors open during the most important scenes, and Crispin Glover's lawsuit created protections that every actor working today still benefits from. Back to the Future isn't just a movie about time travel. It's proof that chaos, determination, and a little bit of luck can create something timeless. It's a reminder that the things we love most are often born from crisis, salvaged from failure, and shaped by people who refuse to give up. Great Scott, indeed. So, have you watched Back to the Future yet? Tell us in the comments what you think about it, and which of these facts surprised you the most. If you haven't, go watch it when you get the chance and then come back to tell us about it. And if you like this video, hit that like button. Subscribe for more deep dives into films that changed everything. Thanks for watching.